though the wide plains stretched on without hurry. Dust lifted in soft clouds behind it, and the late afternoon sun turned everything gold, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Inside one of the worn wooden cars, a young woman sat stiffly by the window, her hands folded tight in her lap, as though she feared they might betray her if left alone. She kept her eyes low, watching the faint tremble of her dress with every bump of the track. The fabric was neat, carefully chosen, but it could not hide the tiredness in her posture or the weight she carried in her silence. Anyone looking close enough would see it, the kind of quiet shame that did not need words. She was going home, but not in the way she once dreamed. The other passengers minded their own business, as people often did when they sensed trouble that was not theirs. A man coughed near the back. A child whispered to his mother. The steady rhythm of the train filled the space between strangers who had no wish to become anything more. At the next stop, the train slowed with a long sigh, wheels grinding against steel. A few passengers stepped off, and a few climbed aboard. Among them was a cowboy, broad-shouldered and dust-covered, his hat low over his brow. He moved with the ease of someone used to long roads and longer silences. His boots struck the wooden floor with a quiet certainty as he walked down the aisle, eyes scanning for a place to sit. There were other empty seats, plenty, in fact, but for reasons no one could quite explain, he stopped beside her. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, his voice calm, carrying the rough edge of wind and open land. She hesitated just for a second before giving a small nod. "No." He sat down beside her, setting a worn leather bag at his feet. For a while, neither of them spoke. The train lurched forward again, pulling them back into its steady rhythm, as if the moment had passed without meaning. But something had changed. She could feel his presence, not in a way that frightened her, but in a way that unsettled her thoughts. It had been a long time since anyone chose to sit beside her without being told. Most people avoided what they did not understand, and she had become something of a question no one wanted to ask. "You're heading far?" he said after a while, not looking directly at her. She swallowed before answering. "Far enough," he gave a small nod as if that was answer enough. His hands rested on his knees, rough and steady, the kind that had seen hard work and harder days. There was no judgment in his voice, no curiosity that pushed too far. Just a simple question, asked and left alone. Still, it made something stir in her chest. The land outside rolled by in quiet stretches, broken only by fences and distant hills. It was the kind of place where stories stayed buried unless someone dug them up. She wondered, not for the first time, if hers would follow her all the way home. "You don't look like someone eager to get there," he said softly. Her breath caught. She turned slightly, just enough to glance at him, but not enough to fully meet his eyes. "What makes you say that?" He shrugged, a faint hint of a smile touching his lips. "I've seen folks go home. Usually they look lighter, not heavier." She looked away again, her fingers tightening. For a moment, it seemed like she might say something more. The truth hovered close, just at the edge of being spoken. Then the train gave a sudden jolt, sharper than the rest, and somewhere up ahead, voices began to rise. The cowboy's expression changed, just slightly, as he lifted his head. And before she could gather her thoughts, the door at the front of the car swung open with a force that made every passenger turn to look. The sudden noise carried through the car like a crack of thunder. A man stumbled in from the front, gripping the doorframe as if the ground beneath him would not hold steady. His hat was gone, his hair damp with sweat, and his eyes moved fast, searching every face as though he had lost something he could not afford to lose. The conductor followed close behind, his voice tight but controlled. "Everyone stay seated. No trouble if there's no reason for it." His gaze swept the car, pausing longer than needed on each passenger, measuring them in a way that made the air feel thinner. The young woman felt her chest tighten. She lowered her head again, hoping to disappear into the stillness she had built around herself. Trouble had a way of finding her even when she kept quiet. It always had. Beside her, the cowboy did not move much, but there was a shift in him. His shoulders squared just a little, his eyes sharper now as they followed the man who had burst in. He did not look surprised, only alert, like someone who had seen this kind of moment before and knew better than to ignore it. The man in the doorway pointed toward the back of the car. "He's here." I know he is. His voice shook, though whether from anger or fear was hard to tell. Ticket clerk said he got on this train. Said he didn't look like much, but neither do snakes till they bite. A murmur passed through the passengers. People shifted in their seats, some turning away, others leaning forward just enough to watch without being noticed. The kind of tension that made strangers suddenly aware of each other. The conductor raised a hand. You'll keep your voice down. We'll sort it proper. But the man did not lower his arm. His eyes kept moving, restless, landing for a moment on the young woman before sliding past her. She felt it, that brief pause, like a shadow brushing against her. Her fingers curled tighter in her lap. You don't understand, he said, his voice lower now but no less urgent. Someone took something from me. Something important. I aim to get it back before this train reaches the next town. The cowboy leaned back slightly, his gaze steady. Lots of folks lose things, he said in an even tone. Doesn't mean you start pointing at every face you see. The man turned toward him, narrowing his eyes. And who asked you? No one, the cowboy replied, calm as before. Just seems like a man ought to be sure before he stirs up a car full of people. For a second, it looked like the man might argue further, but the conductor stepped in, placing himself between them. That's enough. We'll check tickets and baggage if we have to. No need for shouting. The tension eased just a little, but not enough to settle anything. The man lowered his arm, though his eyes kept searching, as if he believed the truth was sitting right in front of him, hiding in plain sight. The young woman swallowed hard. Her thoughts began to race, pulling her back to the reason she was on this train in the first place. The hurried departure. The whispers she had left behind. The feeling that she had not only been running from a place, but from something that might still be following her. You all right? The cowboy asked quietly. His voice meant only for her. She nodded, though it was not entirely true. I just want to reach home, she said, barely above a whisper. He studied her for a moment, not pressing, but not entirely convinced either. Sometimes home ain't waiting the way we expect, he said. She looked down, her throat tightening. I know. Outside, the sky had begun to fade, the gold giving way to deeper shades as evening crept closer. The train pressed on, carrying them all toward something none of them could quite see yet. Up ahead, the conductor began moving down the aisle, checking tickets one by one. The man who had caused the commotion followed a few steps behind, watching closely, his suspicion hanging in the air like a storm that had not yet broken. When they drew nearer, the young woman felt her heartbeat quicken. She reached for her small bag, her fingers brushing against something hidden inside. For a moment she hesitated, as if even touching it might draw attention. Beside her, the cowboy noticed. And just as the conductor stopped in front of them, asking for their tickets, the man's voice cut through again, sharper this time. Wait, he said, pointing. His gaze locked, not on the cowboy, but on her. The man's finger stayed fixed on her, steady now, certain. That's her, he said, his voice no longer shaking. She's the one. The words landed hard in the quiet car. Every small sound seemed to fall away, leaving only the rhythm of the train beneath them. The young woman felt the weight of every eye turned toward her, though she did not lift her head. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap, and she pressed them together to still them. I think you've got the wrong person, the conductor said, though his tone held less confidence than before. He glanced at her, then back at the man. Let's not rush into accusations. I know what I saw, the man insisted, stepping closer. She was near the station when it happened. Kept her face low, just like now, and then she was gone before I could ask questions. His gaze hardened. Now here she is, heading out without so much as a word. The cowboy shifted beside her, his posture changing in a way that was quiet but firm. You're making a leap, he said. Being near a place don't make someone guilty of anything. The man gave a short, humorless laugh. Funny how you're quick to speak for her. Funny how you're quick to blame her, the cowboy replied, his voice still calm but edged now. The conductor raised a hand again. Enough, miss, I'll need to see your ticket. For a moment she did not move. Then slowly, as if each motion took effort, she reached into her bag and pulled out the folded paper. Her fingers brushed past the hidden object again, and she felt a sharp twist of worry. She handed the ticket over without meeting anyone's eyes. The conductor checked it, then nodded. Everything's in order. That don't prove a thing, the man said quickly. Anyone can buy a ticket. A few passengers began to murmur again, quieter this time, but filled with doubt and curiosity. A woman across the aisle leaned closer to her husband, whispering something that made him glance over with a frown. The tension spread like a slow ripple, touching everyone in its path. The young woman finally spoke, her voice low but steady enough to be heard. I didn't take anything from you. The man studied her, searching her face as if trying to pull the truth straight out of her. Then why run? He asked. Her breath caught. She had no simple answer, not one that would make sense to strangers who did not know the whole of it. I wasn't running from you, she said. Then from what? She looked away again, her silence saying more than her words. The cowboy leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees. Some folks have reasons that ain't yours to dig into, he said. Best you remember that? The man's jaw tightened. And some folks hide behind silence when they've done wrong. The conductor shifted his weight, clearly caught between keeping order and uncovering whatever truth lay beneath the surface. We'll handle this properly, he said. No one's going to be accused without proof. We'll check belongings if needed. At that, the young woman's grip on her bag tightened again, almost too quickly to notice. But the cowboy noticed. His eyes flicked down for a brief second, then back up, thoughtful. Outside, the light had dimmed further, the land now a stretch of shadow and fading color. The train pushed forward into the growing dark, carrying with it a question that refused to settle. The man took a step closer to her seat. Mind opening that bag? He said, his tone sharp but controlled. She froze. The conductor hesitated. We can't just search without cause, he said, though the uncertainty in his voice made it clear the line was beginning to blur. She is the cause, the man replied. The cowboy straightened, his presence suddenly more solid, like a barrier placed between her and the rising pressure around them. You're not touching her things without a better reason than a guess, he said. For a moment, it seemed like the whole car leaned in, waiting to see what would happen next. The young woman could feel it all pressing down on her. The past she had tried to leave behind now sitting beside her like an uninvited passenger. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again, staring at the floor. If I show you, she said quietly, it won't change what you think. The man did not hesitate. Only one way to find out. Her fingers moved slowly toward the clasp of her bag, each second stretching longer than the last. The cowboy watched her closely now, not with suspicion, but with something closer to concern. And just before she could open it, the train gave another sudden jolt, stronger than before, throwing everyone slightly off balance. From the front of the train came a sharp whistle, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps and a voice calling out, urgent and strained. Something else had gone wrong. The whistle cut through the train like a warning from another world. It was sharper than before, urgent in a way that made even the most stubborn voices fall quiet. The conductor turned his head toward the front, his attention pulled away for the first time since the accusation began. What now? He muttered under his breath, already stepping back into the aisle. Another voice followed from ahead, louder this time. We've got a problem up here. Brake lines acting strange? A ripple of unease moved through the car. Passengers shifted, some rising halfway from their seats before settling again, unsure whether to stay put or move. The train did not slow, but something in its motion felt different, rougher, like a steady hand had slipped from the wheel. The man who had made the accusation glanced toward the front, his focus wavering just enough to break the hold he had on the moment. What kind of problem? He called out, but no clear answer came back. The young woman's hands were still on her bag, her fingers resting against the clasp. The interruption had given her a breath of space, but it had not taken away the weight pressing on her chest. If anything, it made everything feel more fragile, like the smallest push could send it all falling apart. Beside her, the cowboy leaned slightly forward, his eyes no longer on the man, but on the shifting tension in the car. He seemed to measure the situation in silence, taking in more than he let on. Something ain't right, he said quietly. You think? She replied, her voice barely steady. Up ahead, the conductor's voice rose again, sharper now. Everyone stay seated. We'll handle it. But people were no longer listening as closely. Fear had a way of loosening rules. A man near the back stood fully, peering down the aisle. A woman gathered her child closer, whispering to keep still. The train continued its path, but the sense of control was slipping, inch by inch. The accusing man turned back again, as if trying to decide which trouble mattered more. His eyes landed on the young woman once more, and whatever doubt had crept in seemed to harden again. "We're not done here," he said, his voice low but firm. The cowboy met his gaze without flinching. "Doesn't look like you're in charge of much right now?" That stung. The man took a step closer, tension rising again between them. "Don't test me. I ain't testing you," the cowboy said. "Just telling you to pick your moment better." The train jolted again, harder this time. A few passengers gasped as the car rocked, the wooden frame creaking under the strain. Somewhere ahead, metal clanged sharply, followed by another shout. The young woman's heart pounded. Her thoughts raced between the danger in front of her and the danger sitting right beside her. She could still feel the object inside her bag, small but heavy with meaning. It had brought her here. It had followed her even when she tried to leave everything else behind. "You should keep that closed," the cowboy said softly, his eyes flicking to her bag for just a second. She looked at him, surprised. "You don't even know what's in it?" "Don't need to," he replied. "I know what it looks like when someone's holding on to something that could change things." His words settled over her, not as a threat, but as something closer to understanding. For the first time since the train ride began, she did not feel entirely alone. The accusing man watched the exchange, suspicion deepening. "So you do know something," he said. "Both of you playing quiet like this." The cowboy shook his head slightly. "You're chasing shadows. Or maybe I'm the only one seeing clear," the man shot back. Another jolt ran through the train, stronger than before. This time, it forced several passengers to grab onto their seats. The speed had not dropped, and the sound beneath them had grown louder, harsher, like something grinding that should not be. From the front, the conductor rushed back into view, his face pale but determined. "We may have to stop this train fast," he said, raising his voice so all could hear. "There's an issue with the line. I need everyone ready." A wave of panic threatened to rise, but his tone held just enough control to keep it from breaking loose. The young woman's breath came quicker now. The situation was shifting, turning into something bigger than the accusation, bigger than her past. Yet somehow, everything felt tied together, as if one wrong move could bring all of it crashing down at once. The man looked between her, the cowboy, and the conductor, torn between his mission and the growing danger. "I'm not letting this go," he said. The cowboy stood up slowly now, steady despite the rocking of the train. "You might not get a choice." The train lurched again, violently this time, throwing a few loose items to the floor. A sharp sound echoed from beneath, followed by a long, strained screech. The young woman clutched her bag tightly, her decision hanging by a thread. And as the lights flickered and the car filled with rising voices, she knew the moment she had been avoiding was about to arrive, whether she was ready or not. The train screamed against the tracks as the brakes were forced too quickly. The whole car shuddered, throwing people forward and then back again. Someone cried out, a bag slid across the floor, and for a moment it felt like the world had lost its balance entirely. The young woman held onto the seat with one hand and her bag with the other. Her heart raced, but something inside her shifted. All the fear she had carried, all the silence she had wrapped around herself, suddenly felt smaller compared to what was happening now. This was not just about her anymore. The cowboy stayed on his feet, steady even as the train fought to slow down. He reached out, bracing himself against the seat in front of them, keeping his balance. "Stay put," he said to her, his voice calm even in the chaos. Up ahead, the conductor was shouting instructions, trying to bring order. "Hold on, everyone. We're getting it under control." The man who had accused her grabbed onto a pole, his face tight with fear now instead of anger. For the first time, his focus broke completely from her. The train jolted again, then again, each movement less violent than the last. And then, slowly, the sound beneath them softened, the grinding eased. The speed dropped. The train came to a heavy, final stop in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by open land and fading light. For a few seconds, no one moved. The silence that followed felt unreal after all that noise. Then people began to breathe again, to look around, to check if they were all right. The conductor wiped his brow and let out a long breath. "We're safe," he said, his voice carrying through the car. "Just a fault in the line. We'll fix it before moving again." A quiet relief spread among the passengers. Some laughed nervously. Others sat back, still holding on to the moment. The young woman slowly loosened her grip. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear alone. She looked down at her bag, then up at the cowboy. He gave her a small nod, as if to say the moment had come and gone, but something still needed to be faced. The accusing man straightened, regaining himself. His eyes returned to her, though they were different now. Less sharp, more uncertain. "You were about to open that," he said. She took a breath. This time she did not hesitate. She opened the bag. Inside, wrapped carefully in cloth, was a small metal box. Nothing grand, nothing that looked worth all this trouble. But she held it like it mattered more than anything else. Slowly she unwrapped it and opened the lid. Inside were letters. Old, worn at the edges, tied together with a thin piece of string. The man frowned. "That's it?" She nodded. "That's it." His confusion showed. "That's what you took." "I didn't take it from you," she said, her voice steady now. "It was given to me. By someone who couldn't keep it anymore." She looked down at the letters, her eyes softening. "They belong to a family. Mine, things got broken, words left unsaid. I left town because I was part of that mess. I thought running would make it easier." The car was quiet again, but not tense this time. "Just listening. I wasn't running from what you lost," she continued. "I was running from what I needed to face." The man looked at the box again, then back at her. The certainty he had carried earlier was gone. "I thought," he began, then stopped. He shook his head. "I lost something too. Figured someone must have taken it." The cowboy finally sat back down, relaxed now that the danger had passed. "Sometimes things ain't stolen," he said. "Sometimes they're just gone, and we go looking in the wrong places." The man let out a slow breath. "Maybe I did." The young woman closed the box gently and placed it back in her bag. For the first time, her shoulders eased. The weight was still there, but it no longer felt like something she had to carry alone. Outside, the sky had turned deep and calm. The storm inside the train had passed, leaving behind something quieter, something clearer. The conductor moved through the car again, checking on everyone. Voices returned, softer now, more human. Strangers who had shared fear now shared relief. The man gave her a small nod, not quite an apology, but close enough. Then he stepped back, giving her space. The cowboy glanced at her once more. "Still heading home?" he asked. She looked out the window, then back at him. This time there was no hesitation. "Yes," she said. "But not the same way," he smiled faintly. "That's usually how it goes." The train would move again soon? The journey was not over, but something important had changed along the way. The shame that once filled the space beside her had been replaced by something steadier. Not pride, not yet, but the start of it. And as the wheels prepared to turn again, carrying her forward, she no longer felt like she was running.